So, when you think about violence, what comes to mind? Probably something pretty direct, right? Well, the philosopher Slavoj Žižek has this really provocative idea. He says that to truly understand violence, you can't look at it straight on. You have to take what he calls a sideways glance.
And to get us thinking that way, he kicks the whole thing off with a simple story, one that holds a really powerful paradox.
You see, we're just like those guards. We're so busy looking for the stolen goods inside the wheelbarrow, focusing on the obvious, that we miss what's really going on. He was stealing the wheelbarrows themselves. The guards were so fixated on what might be in there, they totally missed the real crime happening in plain sight. Now you gotta keep this image in your head because it's the key to his entire argument.
This brings us to the kind of violence that we're all familiar with, right? The kind that floods our news feeds and really grabs our attention.
Žižek gives this a name: subjective violence. It's got a clear cause, a clear victim, and it always feels like this shocking break from our otherwise peaceful, normal lives. This is the empty space in the wheelbarrow. It's the obvious thing we're all trained to look for. You know, Žižek wants us to pull a Picasso here and just flip the script. When we see some big outburst of subjective violence, he's challenging us to ask, what if this isn't the real problem? What if it's just a symptom of a much, much bigger system that, well, we're all a part of? So if the riots, the terror attacks, and the crime, if all that is just the distracting, empty space, then what's the wheelbarrow? What's the real violence that we're not seeing?
For Žižek, this visible, subjective violence is really just the tip of the iceberg. The real meat of the issue is what he calls objective violence. And this stuff is way more insidious and a whole lot harder to see. First up, there's symbolic violence. This is the violence that's literally baked into our language, the way words themselves can create hierarchies and enforce power dynamics without a single punch ever being thrown.
And second, we've got systemic violence. Now, this is the big one. This is the devastating harm that's caused not when our systems break down, but when they're working perfectly. It's the anonymous, faceless violence of a global economy that can change the fate of millions with a single keystroke. This objective violence, both symbolic and systemic, is what Žižek calls the dark matter of our social world. It's a fantastic analogy, right? We can't see it directly, but its gravitational pull is what causes all those visible explosions of subjective violence, making them smash into each other in ways that seem totally irrational from the outside.
Okay, I know this is all getting a little abstract. So, to make it more concrete, Žižek points his finger at a very specific and very powerful type of person in our modern world. He gives this person a pretty provocative name, too. He calls them liberal communists. In Žižek's analysis, you can think of the titans of industry and finance who hang out at Davos, figures like Bill Gates or George Soros. These are people who are absolute masters of the capitalist game, but who also champion social causes, fighting things like poverty and disease with huge charitable foundations. The analogy Žižek uses for this is just brilliant. It's like a chocolate laxative. The sales pitch is basically, hey, consume the very thing that causes the problem as the cure for that same problem. It's completely paradoxical. So their whole playbook is to fight that visible, subjective violence of poverty and disease through charity. But Žižek argues that this very act just masks their role as agents of systemic violence, the ruthless financial speculation and monopolistic practices that helped create those conditions to begin with. In Žižek's view, they're giving away with one hand what they already took with the other. Their charity becomes this kind of humanitarian mask that hides the face of economic exploitation, making the very system that causes the damage look like its own solution. So, after a critique that scathing, what does Žižek actually suggest we do about it? Well, his answer is probably not what you're expecting. It actually starts with a bit of a shock. He hits us with this chilling stanza from a Bertolt Brecht poem, which sounds like a call for pretty brutal, revolutionary violence, doesn't it? It's a shocking thing to read. But then, just as you're reeling from that, Žižek completely pivots. He tells this old Soviet joke about Lenin, who wants both a wife and a mistress, not for fun, but as the perfect alibi. It lets him sneak off to a solitary place to just learn. And here's the real punchline. After the total catastrophe of World War I, Lenin didn't immediately rush into action. He actually withdrew to Switzerland to study philosophy. The point of the joke is that sometimes the most practical, the most useful thing to do is to just step back and resist that temptation for immediate action.
Žižek's advice for us today is pretty much the same. Instead of getting caught up in fake urgency and charitable acts that might just be greasing the wheels of the system, we first have to do the hard work of analysis. We have to learn, and learn what's truly causing the violence we see all around us.
And that leaves us with the central provocative question of Žižek's entire argument. In a world that is constantly screaming at us to do something, is it possible that the most radical act of all is to stop, step back, and simply think?